Welcome to Advanced TV Herstory, a podcast dedicated to bringing you the best moments in television or television storytelling that involve women. This podcast looks at great performances or women who pioneered the industry, or we've been known to go behind the scenes to better understand how the women's movement affected that which we saw on the tube. Knowledge is power. We know that there are excellent women in the field today to assume roles behind the camera and in front of it, and the more we know, the more we can demand parity in representation and pay. Advanced TV Herstory hopes you'll be part of the change so that the point of view of women is seen, heard, and understood in the present tense. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams. Oh, America, we have a lot of reflecting to do. We're in the vortex of a lot of change, political, social, and economic. It's why we're a little crabby and on edge. But take heart. This segment of Advanced TV Herstory reminds you that if you look hard enough, there's a TV show or a moment which features a woman, which makes it all better, or at least eases your transition. Or maybe it gives you strength to stand tall and manage others through these times of change. This segment is about superheroes, short-lived TV shows with a strong female lead, and the 2005-2006 groundbreaker Commander-in-Chief. What? You don't recall the 19 episodes that ran with a midwinter break in 2005 and 6 starring Geena Davis as the first woman president? The role of Mackenzie Allen? You don't remember? You do, don't you? Historians, let's revisit 2005 for a minute and learn a bit about a man, Rod Lurie, who cut through the icy waters of Hollywood to sell a network on the importance and relevance of a show about America's first woman president. Lurie had produced a critically acclaimed movie, The Contender, in 2000. Commander-in-Chief's 19 episodes are available on Hulu, and if you want a richer look, buy the DVDs because you'll get the bonus features of Lurie as well as Geena Davis providing insight into the show. Buy the DVDs, pass them along, do the right thing. So yeah, creators worked this show around the time that George W. Bush, was reelected. And in his commentary about the show's pilot, Lurie gives his backstory of Commander-in-Chief's origin.
You know, this is a show that was really born from a movie that I did a few years ago called The Contender. It starred Joan Allen, and it was a movie about a woman who wanted to become the first vice president. And that show was born of my little daughter, Paige. She was little at the time. She was 6 or 7, asking me why there were no candidates for the presidency. Well, the dominoes fell from there, and here we are with Commander-in-Chief about the first female president. I went to Steve McPherson, who at the time was running Touchstone, and, told him this idea and told him that I thought from a commercial point of view that although politics had not really done that well on television before, you get a major star.
Lurie says time and again that in the early 2000s, his aim was not to project this show as partisan. The writers, with the help of Capitol Hill veterans who served as consultants, presented a series of plot lines aimed at the nation's international and domestic affairs. They are conflicts, points of law, discussion of priorities. This dialogue harkens back to a time when progressive and conservative perspectives could come together with a goal of compromise. If anything, this show is a mind grinder. In some ways, it feels like the last gasp of Jimmy Stewart in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. The ideals and the energy that compel and propel a woman or man to serve in elected office. And let me tell you, Geena Davis and the show's writers do not disappoint. We'll talk more about this in a minute. But there's also a sense in viewing up close the personal ploys for power, the importance of loyalty and trust, the doers versus the talkers, that this was a date stamp as 2005, and that things could only get worse. Listeners, I'm doing all I can to steer clear of spoilers. The 19 episodes contain continued plot lines that are very engaging. In fact, the first few episodes pulled in 17 million viewers, and that then went on to drop to 10 million. And it was 2005 and 2006, and if you were an adult back then, remember that the economy was coursing along at a breakneck speed, and we learned only a few years later that that was a bit hollow. George W. Bush had been reelected in 2004, so Americans knew that the 2008 election would bring a new president. And remember, it was only 10 years ago that presidential campaigns lasted for, 18 months instead of 2 years. The landmark Supreme Court decision of Citizens United occurred many years after this show aired. So if it was made today, the power of money in presidential politics, as we might have seen in Commander-in-Chief, would have changed the show entirely. And that's kind of sad. And that's why this show, sort of like a reset to default setting on your computer, is a good thing. But let's get back to Lurie's intent and the goodness that comes from seeing good-looking characters on screen, women and men with backbones and ideals, wearing really great suits, who are prone to giving lofty, well-written speeches about the character of our people and the potential of our future.
You know, some people have accused me and the show of having some level of simplicity, but simplicity is actually pretty important, I think, as the show is launched. You know, I wanted Mackenzie Allen to be an absolute categorical hero. You know, a little bit like when I was a youth, I used to love watching Spider-Man and Batman and Superman pretending to be them, right? And, you know, Jerry Seinfeld once said that when we pretended to be those guys, that was not fantasies. That was those were options when we were kids. And I want young girls to look at Mackenzie Allen and say, I want to be her. And so for the very first few episodes, I didn't want there to be too many shadings. In other words, I didn't want to see too much darkness from her. In fact, the darkness really would have to come from her family life, from her alter ego, the mother, the wife. Just like when we saw problems with those superheroes, they really existed more when they were Bruce Wayne or Peter Parker and or Clark Kent. So really, you know, Mackenzie Allen was meant to be some sort of superwoman, and you know, we were criticized a little bit for that. But you know what? That's what America wanted to see, and that's what I wanted America to see. I wanted America to accept her as a president, to be comfortable with her as a president before we started getting into the dark stuff, before we started getting into the world of her making decisions that were based on her, say, electability.
Stay with me, please, as I try to string together a few thoughts that put this show into greater context. In the 10 years since the series aired, Geena Davis has built the Geena Davis Institute on Gender in Media, and it's housed at Mount St. Mary University in Los Angeles. Her work, and the work of the Institute and its grantees, is to raise awareness of representation of women in TV, film, and entertainment. By representation, we're talking about the quantitative and qualitative presence of women in front of the camera as well as behind it. The number of roles, large and small, speaking and non-speaking, that are written for women characters or could be gender neutral but cast as men, that's what we're talking about. And the quality of those roles, what kind of characters are depicted? Do they represent something that we want our daughters to see, to learn more about, to aspire to? Are they waitresses, or are they CEOs and accountants and lawyers and welders and jobs that are real jobs that they can aspire to? And are they relevant to our experience as American women of all races, education, and status? This podcast's origins lay in the sad state of representation of women in TV today. Both roles we see, as well as opportunities behind the camera to produce, direct, write, and run the show. The Geena Davis Institute's tagline is, if she can see it, she can be it. Learn more at www.cjane.org, SEEJANE.org. Because we're all in this together, right? Are you? At Advanced TV Herstory, we do our best to mine moments when women made TV herstory, to celebrate the creative genius and tell stories of diligence. You can make a difference by becoming more aware of the great gap of representation and talking about it with your women and men friends. Or maybe you could support organizations like the Geena Davis Institute. They're helping fund the research that shows how much or how little progress we're making. Real, quantitative data that should get used and should get seen by studios and directors and producers to better understand just how glaring the disparity is. Or you could become more vocal by sharing on Facebook and Twitter, by writing reviews at websites for women-oriented series or series that feature strong lead women characters, or films that do so, and commenting on reviews written by men that reveal that privilege that we all know to be a singular point of view. That's how we can all be in this together. Okay, back to Rod Lurie, Geena Davis, and the woman in the White House. So 10 years following Lurie's grandiose superhero intentions to depict a superhero-like goodness of President Mackenzie Allen, I feel the effort might be mistaken today for Pollyannishness. Audiences and critics maybe aren't necessarily privy to Lurie's intention to create a superhero that can only be found as a bonus item on the DVD. Browse through their credits and you'll see that there were a few women writers. And browse through the cast list, and President Allen is largely alone, professionally, in a sea of men, and alone as a political independent. So while it was Lurie's goal to put President Allen on the screen and not turn the dramas that surround her presidency into battles of the sexes, the 2016 viewer knows better. Is that good or bad or just necessary, given the historic nature of trying to feature a political figure America had never known or seen? So what I know about what needs to happen for a breakthrough show to gain permanent foothold comes from stories told about the 70s and 80s, the amount of work and salesmanship it took to get Cagney and Lacey on the air. 2 installments of Advanced TV History tell those stories with the help of a fantastic audiobook by the show's creator, Barney Rosenzweig. He lived the long, hard slog that was filled with a lot of men in powerful positions who didn't want the show to air or succeed. And he does so with this incredibly candid storytelling and shares so much about the backstory of the show that went on to an incredibly successful run. And its stars, Tyne Daly and Sharon Glass, bagged as many Emmys as were available during the series' run. This is a show that largely has been forgotten. It's rarely broadcast on cable, and that's a sad... Anyway. Second, according to Rosenzweig, and I believe him fully, the writers and producers Barbara Avedon and Barbara Corday took great pains to create characters from a woman's point of view. This is the role of the writer and the producer, the people who are creating these characters. And Daly and Glass had the experience and confidence to bring Lacey and Cagney to life. Was it just the 80s that they were a different time? So in the talent department, Geena Davis brought serious screen cred to Commander-in-Chief and was thrilled for the opportunity.
And he said, I know you don't want to even hear about these things, but I thought this is an offer, I should share it with you that they'd like you to play the first female president of the United States. There was just about a 3-second pause, and I said, do I have to read it first, or can I just say yes?
At 6 feet tall, she had the look and voice we envisioned our first woman president to have. America, or at least American women, had enjoyed Davis's independent spirit in Thelma and Louise and A League of Their Own. For her 19 episodes on Commander-in-Chief, Davis earned an Emmy and a Golden Globe Award. So President Allen, who we might guess would have been about 45 years old, tends to wear fitted pantsuits with a traditional button-up blouse underneath. Not many scarves, and the occasional brooch. Few dresses. Occasionally, we see Allen wearing a skirt suit with a fully buttoned jacket. This would have been in keeping with her fashion preferences, perhaps, that fit the president's professional experiences that led up to the show and her assuming the role of presidency. She had been a prosecutor, a member of Congress, and a university chancellor. Davis's hair doesn't really change throughout the show's run, and to keep it all real, they actually have plot lines that show her wearing little or no makeup. Oof. Now, why is this important? Because now that we have lived through the first woman candidate for president, endorsed by a major party, we see how much strength, skill, and smarts it takes to navigate the waters, not only for the woman herself, but those who are creating her image and her brand along the way. So maybe a statuesque, youngish president is our aspiration. Commander-in-Chief's family scenes foreshadowed what we would come to experience when the Obama family moved into the White House, complete with a grandmother in tow. But I wonder if, given how underrepresented women have always been on TV, and how much work it takes to get a show with a strong female character on the air, whether Lurie's goal of creating a superhero was just too much nuance. It sounded good on paper, for while Lurie can recall the impressions of Superman, Spider-Man, and other comic book heroes that shaped his character and values, girls have only a fraction of that exposure in women or other girls that they see. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the Powerpuff Girls, the Bionic Woman, for Pete's sake. They didn't come to the screen from comic books, but they have used superhuman powers to inspire us. And they were, and remain, our role models. It likely didn't occur to Lurie that women watch TV differently than men do. We don't have the countless hours of affirmation and adoration that comes with televised sports. Not only the visuals, but also the commentary that goes on as we watch all of the major league sports. And we're used to that disparity, to the vast gap in representation. Because of that, we pay attention differently to what we see on the screen. Writing matters more, wardrobe matters more, character development, details. The bar is actually quite high. Women in their heads can turn a regular TV character into a superhero. Julia Sugarbaker, or Alicia Florrick, or Olivia Benson. I'm going to leave it at that. I go back to how much work it took to get Cagney and Lacey launched, and then I look at the big kickoff of Commander-in-Chief. The road of hiccups it took before never even completing its first season was likely seen as predictable by those who had been associated with quality short-run series. After a few episodes, Stephen Bochco and his team briefly came on board Commander-in-Chief to smooth out the characters and create some momentum. There was a gap of many months between the fall episodes and the ones promoted in the spring of 2006. In those years, there was no must-see TV in my life. Our 2 kids were in middle school, I had a 2-hour round-trip commute, and my mother had a heart condition. Having just viewed all 19 episodes, the seriousness of the plot lines, again, it feels like they were trying to accomplish an awful lot.
We are dealing now with a story, in this case, of a Nigerian woman who is being held by Sharia law in Nigeria for having committed adultery. She's going to be executed. And Geena, playing Mackenzie Allen here, is going to take on this woman's issue, and it's going to be one of her first priorities that she's going to deal with. And everybody seems to, be upset with this notion that she is using her femaleness or her femininity to influence some sort of public opinion or to enforce public opinion, which is one of the first fears that we might have of a female president. I happen to think it would be an absolute strength. And without a doubt, this was written to appeal to women that are watching this show. Now, that's preaching to the converted. Once the women start watching, their husbands watch, their boyfriends watch, and they're not quite converted. But maybe we can get them there.
I love that they devoted plot bandwidth to international affairs. American TV as a whole has drifted away from the notion that our business and government are leaders of the world stage. Davis as President Allen is credible and measured, the consummate professional. Commander-in-Chief, the show, overlapped with the last season of the critically acclaimed political drama West Wing. So it's easy to understand that the bar had been set high for Commander-in-Chief creator Lurie and a cast led by Davis and another incredibly accomplished actor from film, Donald Sutherland. One big difference between the two was that Commander-in-Chief dedicated parts of each episode to the president's family. By the time the Bushes left the White House in 2008, in reality, they were empty nesters. President Allen, on the other hand, has 3 children, 2 teen twins, and a 6-year-old. And if you watch closely, you'll see that it's in those family scenes that we start to hear the subtle conversations about feminism, gender roles, gender-biased media scrutiny, and the historical experience that this family is living. These were real conversations heard at American dining rooms, or at least not the part about being the first family. But adding colorful, straight-talking Polly Bergen to the family cast was a stroke of genius. Early in the series run, we see the family needs taking a toll on President Allen and her husband, Rod. This is something all working families feel. Because President Allen is from Connecticut, her mother is on the East Coast as well. So she comes for Thanksgiving, and Mackenzie, with Rod's encouragement, asks her to stay on and be part of the family. It's Bergen's character, Mrs. Allen, who voices the awe and admiration women feel about the advancement of a woman to the presidency. The writers chose to depict teenage daughter Rebecca as self-centered and struggling with the significance and sacrifice that comes with being a member of the first family. Bergen projects just the right balance of broad shoulders, street smarts, and compassion to help you better understand how her daughter, superhero Mackenzie Allen, could even exist. Maybe Mackenzie should have brought her on the scene sooner to handle daughter Rebecca.
Isn't it about time for lights out, dear?
Oh, sure, Grandma. Just give me a second. Where's Mom and Dad?
They're still working.
Big surprise.
I'm sure it's important.
Yeah, sure. Very important. President of Mongolia is here, or stock market dropped point, or congressman needs his ass kissed.
Becca.
What? It's true. It's what she does. Every day. Meanwhile, we stay here and eat dinner alone and watch her on the news.
If you weren't so wrapped up in yourself, maybe you'd notice something very serious is going on. Now, I don't know what it is, but I know this. When we're in trouble, there's no one I'd rather see in charge than your mother. And if you don't feel that way, if you aren't proud to feel that way, then I just don't know you.
I guess we feel differently.
I guess we do.
Without spoiling anything further, I will tell you that they position Rebecca as Republican-leaning, though there's little dialogue written to explain why. And that might make for an easy family plot conflict, but it gives short shrift to the characters of Mrs. Allen and Mackenzie. By the 21st century, family conversations about economics, justice, education, and feminism, particularly around the table led by two educated professionals as engaged as Mackenzie Allen and Rod Calloway were, that should have made Rebecca much more aware of the world around her. Rebecca shifts a bit, maybe finally coming to a maturity to understand that the middle ground positions and successes her mother is leading are really important to the country. But regardless, the reasons for her political leanings are never fully probed, and she's the foot dragger on sacrificing anything more, particularly when the family starts talking about whether President Allen is going to run for office, following her succession to the seat.
Are you?
I say go for it.
You mean that horse?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I stay up and watch the election returns this time?
Yes, you can.
Then I think you should do it.
Becca?
Does it matter what I think?
It's a family discussion. It matters what everybody thinks.
So does that mean if I say no, you won't run?
It means that everyone gets a say.
So then it doesn't really matter what I think.
Honey, if you don't want to be part of a campaign, that's fine. You'd have to do anything you don't want to do.
Mom, I'm a part of it whether I want to be or not. You think I'll be left alone just because you say so?
We'll talk to the press, we'll control the media.
And the tabloids and talk radio and the net. I mean, remember when those bloggers claimed that Tommy wasn't President Bridges' son?
That was a lie. Nobody believed that.
There are still people who believe that.
Come on, Beck. It's not gonna be like that.
In an election, they can say whatever they want about us. You think people care if it's the truth?
Becca.
Mom, do whatever you want, okay? Just don't pretend you care about my opinion.
Well, Becca's first reaction is always to strike back, then she comes around.
So Rebecca's evolving. I wonder what she'd be doing today.
Secretary of State's in Bangalore, and his day's just getting started.
So I was just coming down to say goodnight.
Oh, sorry we never made it up to the residence tonight.
Hey, it's fine. I'm sure whatever it is important.
It is.
I know. Look, Mom, I was thinking about what you said earlier, and I know you're going to run. I mean, it's your choice, whatever. You shouldn't have to change your whole life because of me. I get that. But you said that I wouldn't have to be a part of the campaign, and I really don't want to be.
Okay. I know it's hard being in the spotlight.
No, you don't, Mom. You are a natural at it, and you always have been. But I'm not like that. I don't like people staring at me and talking about me. I want to have a normal life. That's all.
Okay, you're not gonna have to do anything you don't want to do.
Okay. I mean, I'll be in college in a year and a half anyway. It's not like I'll be around.
Ma'am, the speaker's here. Everyone's waiting in the cabinet room.
Baby, I'm so sorry.
I'll see you in the morning.
We'll never know whether President Allen, as a sitting president without a party, ever got elected to a 4-year term. But the writers delivered the appropriate dose of earnestness with competitive confidence to make you want to root for good, to support the one who wants to work hard and compromise, and yet the one who also, at the same time, draws the line at shady dealing.
You did a great job today.
Maybe I shouldn't run.
Mac.
We're parents first.
Well, Becca's a teenager. She's going to go through these phases no matter what we do.
This isn't a phase. There's going to be pressure to trot them out. You know that.
Mac, she'll be fine.
I want her to be more than fine. I want her to be happy, to flourish.
She will. Look, I'm not saying it's not a sacrifice, but she's going to come to see that there are things in life worth sacrificing for. And they all will.
That's assuming I win. What if I don't?
You'll win.
I'm not so sure. All the money we have to raise, the things I have to do just to get on the ballot. I could work my ass off and still place third. Is that worth the sacrifice?
If you commit. I mean, if you really commit to this, you're going to win.
We're going to look back on this in 2 years, in 6 years.
Advanced TV Herstory is indeed fascinated by critically acclaimed series that last only a season. We see it time and again. We only need look back on My So-Called Life, which was covered in an earlier podcast installment, for proof. So, clips taken for this installment come from DVDs, the 19 episodes, as well as bonus features. I recommend buying them and passing them along to girls and women of all ages. This is your chance to give your aunt or grandma or mother something she never would have expected for the holidays. And yes, you can also find them on Hulu. Follow this podcast on Twitter. Our handle is @TVHerstory. Find this script and those from past installments, which make for perfect reading for when you're in the doctor's office waiting room, at CynthiaBemisAbrams.com. Cast your vote for this podcast in the form of a rating or review at iTunes or at the hosting site Libsyn, Libsyn. And the mailbox, advancedtvherstory@gmail.com, is always open. Big thank you to David Brown for production services. It's been fun hearing from listeners lately. Who knew that this would be the season to revisit the Anita Hill segment, the study of Billie Jean King's courage, and finally to pay homage for just a moment to B. Arthur as Maud. It's been quite a year. Because what it comes down to is this: if we don't celebrate that good work, who will? Stay tuned for more glimpses into the stories and achievements of women in and of TV. It's all here at Advanced TV Herstory. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams.